y'all, this is Briley McPherson again on the Unbridled Faith podcast channel on YouTube. Today I got my brother from my mother. So we're 3 years and 9 months apart, right?
I think so.
Yes. So he is older than me, his big brother. So he has a awesome story, just his whole life. Very talented. He can strum the guitar and play blues, for sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about Brock and his faith and everything, and we might get into the Bible. So I'm going to let Brock share a little bit about what he does and how he got to know God and Jesus, if that's good with you, and maybe we can go from there.
Sure. Okay, so I met God as a kid, and I don't know, as a kid, just the way that I grew up and just the understanding that I had at the time was sort of like, because of sin and just being born into a world of sin, inevitably, God was going to have to execute judgment, and I was going to have to be saved, or I was going to go to hell.
You knew you was going to be judged.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, there was a time where I, got in enough trouble that, in that separated condition, or that separated state from God, that I knew, that I was just going to have to fully rely on Him, and I fully surrendered.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, after that happened, and I was first, when He had gave me peace and let me know that I was going to be okay, spiritually and eternally.
Yeah.
That I don't know. I just had this false impression that, well, from here on out, my time is my time, and I can do whatever I want to.
Okay.
And just young and not having a lot of experience with this, human experience.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, I just put Him on the shelf. I just, thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
See you when I get there, kind of deal. And so I don't know. I never really had like an actual relationship with God.
Like you knew God, but
I knew what He had done for me. I knew He took all that trouble away. I knew He had told me that, when I died, that I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I just didn't see all that much use for Him in my daily life, rather than when something was going wrong, you knew
like you had to.
Let's call the dream team.
Yes.
I need a miracle right here. This is, I have no control.
Right.
Let me see if I can call in a miracle right here. Yeah. So, anyways, so in doing that, I don't know about everybody else, but I was just always kind of longing for something.
Like you didn't have, was it like a longing for something like you didn't have, or you just, like you felt like was out there you couldn't get, or what? Explain kind of.
Well, I guess, at the time, I don't know, like I mean, today I'd call it happiness. Then I would have called it happiness. I had all these false beliefs of where happiness lied.
Okay.
A lot of the people that I've, seen, some of them, like they had money and they seemed to be content from what I saw.
Yeah.
They seemed to be really happy with their lives. And some people, had other, just other activities or
But you could say like happiness or whatever.
Yeah, what I thought, was happiness. And some people got it from their relationships, it seemed like, and other things. So I about like anybody trying to obtain anything, I mimicked what seemed to work out of other people or whatever. And it just never really kind of worked out for me. It was there was always and I found early on there was always a false summit. Like every time I would reach a milestone, that I thought was just really going to make me feel
better, or
it was going to make me feel complete, or it was going to make me feel great about myself, or whatever. Every time I reached one of them, I just wanted the next. Now I was just looking forward to the next mountain I had to climb, or you know what I mean. So, I don't know. I just kind of got caught up in it, and a big thing for me too was, I guess, rejection.
Okay.
Anytime that, like I would get in a relationship, or a friendship, or whatever, wouldn't work out or whatever, I wouldn't see it as, this isn't a good fit, this didn't work, for whatever reason. I took it as, I don't work.
Okay.
I have got something about me that causes things not to work out with my relationships with people.
You was like you thought like you're just.
I just thought there was something about me. That kept me from having the relationships with people that it seemed like others were able to have.
Okay. Yeah.
And I didn't quite know what it was, or if I did, I didn't want to admit it. I don't know. But anyway, so along with all that comes, anxiety and stress and worry about how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to make these people like me,
right?
How I'm going to keep from losing whatever relationship or thing that I've got, and I mean, it's just fear. I mean, to me, the only two, all fear is derived from fear of not getting what I want, or fear of losing what I've got.
Yes. I can relate to that.
I mean, that's where all fear is derived from, for me anyway.
Yeah.
And so I'm being ruled by fear, and all these thoughts that, as a kid, I also had the false assumption that, my thoughts were part of who I was. Like that the things that I think sort of made me who I am.
Yeah, they like defined you or something, maybe.
I thought, maybe nobody else thinks these things,
right,
or whatever. And anyway, so at a young age, I got introduced to drugs and alcohol, and when I would drink or I would smoke pot or whatever, all them fears and worries just slipped away, and suddenly, for whatever reason, I was confident. I was bold.
Is it like you you felt like you changed?
In a sense, like it took away all them fears and stuff, or at least
so it's like
removed them from
a Band-Aid
the
or something,
present
maybe.
train of thought in my mind.
Okay.
And I felt confident to do something in a group of people and not worry about what anybody was thinking. I felt confident to go up and talk to the girl at the bonfire, that I was, too shy or too scared to go do something like that.
So for you, it drove out fear.
And I guess a lot of it was it gave me a good excuse. If I did something like that and somebody was like, no, or why did you say that? Why did you do that? That was weird, or that was uncalled for. Well, I could turn around and say, well, I was drunk, or I was high. Stuff like that.
But you,
so I just
it kind of like took the what you're saying, the fear.
It took a lot of my anxieties. And stuff away, And so, anyways, is that, and I mean it's also, I feel like, important to point out that drugs and alcohol weren't my problem. They were my solution.
Okay.
My problem was, the reason I wanted to change the current state of mind I was in into another one is because I was not comfortable in my current state of mind. And it was due to all that fear and anxiety and just stress and, like things, just worries of like status and everything. And so I done that for, long enough that, eventually as time went on, I got introduced into like pain pills, and they seemed to do a better job of removing all that stress and anxiety while not making me so messed up that like I could still function around people without it being so noticeable.
Okay.
That I had been drinking or that my eyes were bloodshot because I had been smoking or whatever. And in doing that, for long enough that I became physically dependent upon them. And so you get to a point to where your body basically, it just stops. You're altering the chemical balance in your head, and so your body basically, you're throwing all these chemicals in there, and these things like dopamine and serotonin and everything else that your brain would normally be producing on its own in moderate doses or whatever, you're now flooding yourself with. And because of that, your brain is saying, well, okay, I don't need to focus on doing this anymore, because he's putting it into me. I don't need to go through this process of making these things up, because he's finding the source of it elsewhere. I don't need to put it in there. And so, like I said, I became addicted to them physically, and you get to a point to where like, the only choice that I had really at the time was, okay, am I going to lay here and be sick, or am I going to do drugs so that I won't be sick and I can get through, function and do something throughout the day. And so that went on for a good while. Inevitably got put in jail because I'd got arrested and caught with some drugs, and I got put on probation and violated that, and got put in jail and sat in there for about 6 months. And I can remember, like, while I was in there, like my head kind of leveling out. I don't know, a couple months, 2 or 3 months in, and thinking, like, okay, like maybe this is going to be a good thing for me. Because I was still kind of back and forth every day. I would wake up one day and think, well, I would do anything to get out of here and get high. And then the next day I would wake up and be like, what am I doing? Like, I don't ever want to do this again. And finally, I don't know, I got tired of that in jail, and I prayed, and I was like, all right, God, if this is all I'm going to be, just take me, because I don't want to do this no more. And it just, I don't know, it was somewhere in that prayer, I got in touch with him again, and yeah, he lifted that desire from me. Well, then, I still didn't know at the time, because I was.
So was it like he was still what, like, was that an example of him being there and you coming back to him and him always having his arms open for you?
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time too, like, I'm still. This is one of the first real talks that I've had with him in a long time. And I'm still, I'm young. I don't know. I don't really know how to. I don't really know how to put it into words, but
that's fine.
I didn't really I didn't really know that I was like a drug addict or an alcoholic.
Okay.
I thought that, I had just got a little far out there or whatever. And this was the first time when I was in jail that since I had started using at like 14, I think.
Okay.
This was the first time that I had ever been sober more than, a couple weeks.
Okay.
And so I was just, naive, and I had, which a lot of people this happens to, that come in early on in recovery, they go just a little amount of time, a couple months or whatever, through sobriety, and suddenly they think, whoa, okay, I've been sober for a month or 2 months, and they get this false sense of control, like suddenly, now that I've not done it for a while, I'm going to be able to control it now. And one thing that Miss Carrie had said to me, when
who's Miss Carrie?
Carrie Thomas, she used to be the nurse up here at the jail.
Oh, okay.
And she told me, like, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And so, in my mind, I was like, okay, so here's what I'll do. When I get out, I'm going to be on probation, so I'll just drink.
Okay.
Because, I got to where I didn't really like drinking anyways. I preferred doing other stuff. And it seemed to me like the other stuff was what got me into the trouble that I was in. And so I was like, I'll just drink. And then when I get off probation, I'll just smoke pot. And I just won't let myself do anything else. And, that'll be me doing something different. And I won't wind up back in all this trouble again. But like I say, like I had never had any kind of education on recovery or addiction or anything like that, and I didn't realize what I was, and so fast forward, I stay in jail about 6 months. I get out, and I go through probation. I get through probation, and I finally decide, like, okay, well, I'm gonna smoke pot now. And so I let myself start smoking pot, and it takes, what seems like literally no time before I wound up somewhere where people were doing other stuff, and I was like, well, I haven't done it in so long, like, yeah, I can do it, and just leave it, and that wound up not being the case. And so shortly after that, I found myself waking up again, like, oh no, I'm sick, like I've done got hooked on them again or whatever. So I went to an outpatient place in Mount Juliet, and I talked to them, and I kind of had the thought then. I was like, okay, so if I hadn't have been smoking pot, then I wouldn't have wound up around this other stuff, and I wouldn't have had no desire to do it. If I just wasn't doing nothing, then it wouldn't have snowballed like this. And so, like, I went there with the intention of, and the expectation that they was going to tell me, like they was going to put me on this, medicine to get me off of, the opiates or whatever. And I assumed that in order to receive the prescription for that, they would, be drug testing us, and they would make sure that, like, we wasn't doing anything else. And so I told them when I got there, I was like, I don't want to get hooked on these and get bad off like I used to be. Just give me 30 or 45 days to get the pot out of my system, and then I'll do my best not to fail a drug test when I come in here. And they was like, oh, you're not here to stop smoking pot, are you? And I was like, well, no. And they was like, well, you can smoke all the pot you want to, just don't fail for opiates or whatever. And so I was like, well, okay. And so, but I didn't like the thought of being hooked on the opiates and stuff again. And so I more or less did the same thing. I took that medicine for a while and got off of them. And and did good there for a good while. I didn't do anything but smoke pot. Occasionally, like I would drink with friends or whatever. But inevitably, I ended up, make a long story short, a crisis took place in my life, if you want to call it that. And I still, drugs or alcohol or whatever, that was still my tool. That was still my solution to any fear or anxiety or worry or sadness, any form of negative emotion. Those were still my go-tos.
Okay.
And so I'm already smoking and drinking occasionally or whatever, and then, like I say, something takes place in my life that these things don't take care of immediately. You know, my brain goes back to, well, this always worked, at least for a little while. And I went back to that, and, like, you know, afterwards, like after that first return to the drugs, I was like, man, like, this is just like, you know, the you know, in the aftermath of you know, waking up the next day or whatever, I was like, man, like, I'm just doomed to do this because I just don't have a better way. There's just no other way for me to deal with this stuff. And, you know, because as soon as I woke up, there was all those negative emotions that, you know, were just there. They were there waiting on me on the other side of that high. And I was like, you know, I guess I'm just doomed to always have to do this if I want to feel any relief. And so,
all right, son's getting me now. Sorry.
So I went on there for a while, you know, and like I say, after that time, I was kind of let go of any reservations that I had about what I was going to do or whatever, until inevitably I ended up getting a DUI one night, and I don't know, I just, something about it, and it, granted, it took a few days for it to really, the weight of it all to really sink in on me. But I just got to a point where I was just, you know, I was miserable. I hated the idea of having to, you know, just do that and be this for the rest of my life. And so I talked to somebody and on the phone. I was talking to them about everything I had going on, and they was like, well, look, I want you to do me a favor. 2 favors right here. One, whatever you're taking, just stop. And 2, when we get off the phone, promise me that you'll pray. And I, you know, I didn't want to hear none of that, but they was like, Brock, if you want my help at all, like, promise me when we get off this phone you'll pray. And I was like, all right, fine. And so I prayed, and I guess my parents, seeing the writing on the wall, they kind of they kind of knew, and they had kind of reached out to some people or whatever. And my mom had sent me a list of the meetings that they have here in Macon County, and for whatever reason, like, as I was praying, that the image of that list she had sent me popped into my head and just wouldn't go away. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Ain't nothing else worked. This surely ain't going to work, and I'll prove it. But at the very least, it might at least, you know, begin to fool everybody into thinking, you know, that I'm trying. And because up until then, like, I had never really, the only kind of people I had ever been around that were addicts and alcoholics were people who only weren't getting drunk and high because they was stuck in jail. And they also had never been around anybody who had actually recovered. or who had actually, and the few people I did know that just 100% abstained from drinking or drugging whatsoever that used to, they were miserable. You know, they were miserable. They were constantly upset that they were just having to go through life sober. And I was like, what's the point of that? You know, so I didn't have any belief whatsoever that once a person had ever become an alcoholic or an addict, that they could then have any kind of semblance of a happy life afterwards, you know. And so I go to this meeting in Red Bowling with Jeff Hicks and John Russell Davis and some other people there and stuff. And for the first time in I don't know how long, I was like as honest as I could be at the time.
At that meeting?
With somebody.
Oh, with somebody. Oh, you talking about on the phone or at the meeting?
Like when I got to the meeting, like I talked to Jeff there, like in an office before the meeting for a little while, and just talked to him about everything. And he was like, you know, I told him what all I had going on, what I was doing, blah 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 blah. And he was like, okay. He was like, Brock, I want to help you. And I'll do everything I can to help you, but like I can't help you with all of this. Have you ever heard of weight makers? And I was like, no, what is that? And he was like, it's over at the behind the old Susie Q's building.
You're like, Mom, was that on Mom's list?
No. Well,
so
no. If it was, I hadn't noticed it yet. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea.
It was like another. Paula's giving him a list.
Yeah, like I had no idea what it was.
Sorry.
And he told me about it, and he was like, do you know Wanda and Carolyn Smith and Heather? And I was like, yeah, I've known them my whole life. And he was like, well, they run it with another woman, and they can probably do a lot more to help you with all this other stuff that you got going on, you know. And he was like, I really think it'd be a good idea for you to go and talk to him. And I was like, okay, you know, I was miserable, and I didn't have an answer, and I didn't know if it would work, and I mean, just kind of honestly, I thought, well, you know, maybe, you know, maybe at the very least, this will buy me some time or whatever, you know, like I just didn't know, I just didn't want to be miserable anymore. And at that meeting, I talked to Colby Lane for the first time, and I had been around Colby some. Like, I mean, I'd known him all my life, but I had been around him a few times, you know, like in addiction, and he was one that, like, I knew that had done a lot of the things I'd done, and he was happy and healthy, and like, and nothing about him seemed to be like scheming or just playing nice, which is what I had always done. You know, to save face and look presentable, but really just do what I'd always known to do. And so I was like, you know, okay, maybe, but I'm not sold on it yet. And so I went and talked to him at Waymakers. You know, I started going to some of the meetings, and a big shift for me was going to the AA group up here in Lafayette. And I went in there and I started listening to them people in the room share, and they was talking about things that had happened to them, things that they had done, and they were describing me, and I kept going and I paid attention, and I was like, man, like these people, you know, because I thought, you know, they was happy. They was in there cutting up and laughing. Didn't seem like they had a care in the world. They was at peace with everything. And I just didn't get it because I didn't have nothing to laugh about at the time. And to me, I mean, my world was just falling down all around me. And I thought, surely, okay, they are at the very least taking like handfuls of CBD gummies, or they're eating gas station pills, or they've got some kind of prescription that somebody has deemed okay from the doctor, whatever it is I want in. And as I kept going and I paid attention, I realized, like, okay, like, they're not doing nothing, and they're happy about it. Like, they're genuinely happy about it or whatever. And everybody, I mean, every recovery program, well, every other program, whether it's like Celebrate Recovery or NA or whatever, they're all just stepchildren or whatever you want to call them of AA.
Okay.
And that being the case, they're spiritual programs and
faith-based. A lot of them, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, AA is a spiritual program.
Okay.
It's not a religious program.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Whereas, like Celebrate Recovery and things like that, they are.
Okay.
But everybody was telling me, the reason that they was able to live the lives they were living was because of God. That they had, that everything they had ever looked for in drugs and alcohol and partying or relationships or whatever, they found with God.
Okay.
And that I could have it too if I do these steps and work for it. If I would just not drink or not drug for today and do these steps long enough, that somewhere in there I would find what they had too. And I wanted it, because I recognized at the time, I was like, they've got something that I didn't even have before I knew about drugs and alcohol. I didn't just want to get back to where I was before. I wanted what they had.
Yeah.
And so
did it seem like contagious for you? You was like,
yeah, it really is. And so I'm in the process of doing all that, and it's hard, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go through with it or not. It had been a good, I don't know, it had been some time since I had drank or drugged, but I was still struggling with having what they had, and it just didn't seem like I was ever going to get there. And Kobe Lane's mom, actually, Sabrina, she had given him a little book that she had read, and it was like, it was something like 40, 50 pages, just a little small book. And she'd given it to me and just said that, she was done with it and thought I might like it, whatever. And in this book, it basically kind of told the story of this man. Well, okay, let me back up. It told the story of this woman who was carrying this bag of trash. A huge bag of trash that was weighing her down. It was hurting her back. It was making her knees weak. It was doing all this stuff. And this man comes up to her and says, why don't you get rid of that? And she's like, I can't. This is all of who I am. Like, she's got like
baggage.
Yes, more or less is what it is. And he says, "Well, come to the dump tomorrow at 9:00. Be there or whatever, and I'll show you how you can let go of it or whatever." And so anyway, she goes and does it, and he takes her bags and pours it on himself and takes that and takes the pain of all that, and suddenly she's just like, her whole body is revived. She feels better. And he tells her to throw her bag away, and from now on, just when you think about holding on to something like that, just remember me and know that you don't have to carry it, that I'll carry it for you if you need me to or whatever.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was carrying a lot of baggage and stuff. And so, anyways, I go, and I'm at work when this happens. And
for whatever,
no, I read it at work.
Oh, okay.
For whatever reason, I'd had to go in real early that morning. And I forget what I was having to do, but I was more or less just having to like hit go on a machine and sit there for a while. And so I was reading in between cycles and stuff. And after I read that, I was like, things just, I don't know. I was just trying to make sense of it all and everything else, not just that story, but the recovery process in general and everything else.
Well, it is hard to think about because it's referring to like us as humans taking like the baggage to God, right?
Him taking our sins upon himself, yeah.
It's hard to imagine that because you're like...
Yeah, it just gave me a way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And so,
it's hard
anyways, I didn't know, and I still, like at the time, like I had prayed, but I don't know, it was like I was just leaving voicemail after voicemail and getting no callbacks is what it felt like. And
mute.
yeah, I mean really. And so I went in the bathroom
at work.
At work, and I was like, and I got down and prayed, and didn't even. I used, before then I would take paper towels and put them down on the ground like for my arms and my knees. And that day I only had 2 paper towels. And so I cleaned off the top of the commode. I cleaned off the top of the commode lid and I put them down for my knees and I got over top of the commode.
You're
and
such
I was
a clean freak.
And I was like, I'm such a what?
Clean freak, germaphobe.
Well, you go check that commode out. But it didn't. I mean, I just wiped off the seat. I put the seat cover. I put the seat cover down and wiped it off good. And I got down and I prayed and I was like, God, like I don't know if what I just read in this book is true. I don't know if this ain't just some, just a nice thought that somebody's come up with or whatever.
Yeah.
But here's the deal, man. Like I'm tired of doing this. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've got all these desires, like, and that was another thing. Like somewhere along in there, I realized I wasn't really wanting to do right, for God or anything like that. I wanted to feel better and I wanted to get my way. I thought that if I'd done good, maybe God would say, okay, here's a bone, dog.
Okay. Here's your reward.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I got down and I was like, you know what? Like I can't do this anymore. I don't know. I don't know where I stand with you. I don't know how to do better. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do nothing. So just let me know. Just let me know me and you are good. Clean me off right here. And let me know like clean me off, like let me know that me and you are good and at peace, and then just take me because like I don't want to do this no more. And as soon as you let me up, as soon as I step up from this commode, I'm sure that like I'm going to find a way, whether I mean to or not, to make another mess. And the only way that I know how to describe it is like it was like I was, without knowing it, wearing this like bodysuit that was constricting on me from like all angles. And as soon as I said that, it was like something from the center of me just
like it like flourished around you,
exploded, and it just like busted all that off me. And like I mean I felt it, like I felt it spiritually, I felt it physically, and
it's the Holy Spirit.
From there, like he let me know like it's gonna be okay. Not yet though. Like, you don't die just yet. And but everything's gonna be all right. Just stay right here close to me from now on. And from there it's grown into because I mean, that was just, I don't know, that was just, when I was a kid and all the trouble went away, and I felt all that was one thing. But I don't know, I'm sure it'll sound crazy to some people, but like, I had this gnawing compulsion to do sinful things, whether it be drugs or I don't know, just all these compulsions to do sinful things.
Do you think?
And when that happened, like,
all that went away?
I don't know. All I know is that I was one person, or I thought I was anyways, before that day in the bathroom, and ever since then I've been completely different, and that was just like a mountain of a cornerstone that was laid in the foundation of not just my recovery, but in my relationship with God. And so, from there, I'm an addict. From there, I'm like, whoa, he just like legitimately like answered a prayer.
Like you've seen it.
I feel like to me, it felt like the change that took place, and the physically how much better I felt. Like,
I think
I felt like the woman with the issue of blood or something. Like I really felt like I had just got healed.
Like a miracle.
Like I had just got healed inside and out.
I think, and I know I forget like how hands-on God is like that.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. And so from there, I just started diving in, anything that I could do, anywhere I could go, anything I could talk about or read that I felt like was getting me closer to him and getting me to a place to where I could hear any kind of communication from him. Because like in the Bible you read, the Lord said this to whoever or whatever. But I don't. I always took that as it was kind of like an audible voice that just boomed out of nowhere. Talking to him, and he'd never talked to me like that, and so I didn't know. But and like I say, he let me know that everything was going to be okay. That day in the bathroom, but it wasn't like an audible. Everything's gonna be okay.
Right.
It was a communication, but it was not. It was not a physical communication, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just felt it, and I knew what it meant. Kind of like a good actor in whatever movie or whatever, they make a face, and you know exactly what they're thinking.
Right.
You know exactly what they would say. It's kind of that, except it was just a feeling. And so I started, like I say, being an addict, I started chasing that. I mean, that was, to me, that was the most intense and profound experience that I had ever had in my life.
That in the bathroom?
Yes, okay. And unless they came up with a new drug since I got sober, like, I've tried everything. And that in the bathroom was the realest, greatest, most profound thing that like I've ever experienced. And so I started chasing that, and I still am.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to like, I always, growing up, I had this, idea or understanding of God as,
back to the shelf thing, like you just.
Well, that, and I knew, that God was God, and that He could help me, or He could do whatever He wanted to. But I had like broke my word to Him so many times that I just didn't really think that He would.
Okay,
and
so it's
you know what I mean. And that if I approached Him, He was just going to be waiting to give me the punishment that I deserved. Like are you really coming here asking me for something else after all those times you said, Lord, if you get me out of this one, I'll never do it again, and then you drove off doing it again. Like are you really going to come to me and ask me for something else? That's just how that was just my understanding. And another thing that and this was me. I didn't think it in these words, but this was 100% where I was at. That I heard a guy in the room say, because part of the steps is turning over your will in your life to the care of God. And I didn't want to do that because that meant that God could send me to some country that I didn't want to be in to feed people that I didn't care about. I didn't want something like that to happen.
It wasn't your life anymore. It was.
Yeah, and I didn't like the idea of that.
Yeah.
And as after that experience happened, I realized okay, I don't know, it opened me up to who he was, and I realized, okay, he knows me inside and out. He knows me better than I know myself. So, if I pray for his will for me, his will for me surely isn't to watch me be miserable the duration of my time here. He knows what's best for me. And there's been times, where I didn't always understand what was going on and everything else. But as time went on, and I just, I leaned in, and I was like, okay, dude, I don't understand what's going on. I don't know why this is happening. All I know for sure is that you told me that day that everything was going to be all right, and everything don't feel all right, and I know you're not going to lie to me, so I'm going to ride this out.
And say where it takes me.
Because I know all right has got to be on the other side of it. And yeah, every time, in his time, obviously not in mine, but in his time, things unfold, and they, and I have that, well, at AA we call it the pop, but we'll call it the light.
Okay.
The light bulb goes off in my head, where I'm like, oh, okay, this is why he didn't let what I wanted to happen.
Okay.
This is why he didn't give me what I wanted, because he knew what I needed, and he was already that had to happen so that he could give me what he knew I needed and what would be better for me than what I thought I needed.
Right, and I know I do the same thing. I'm like, why I wanted it this way? Why didn't I get it this way? And then I'm like, if I would have,
and I mean, don't get me wrong either. I mean, everybody's recovery story is different. Not everybody's is like mine. Some people, say they get it gradually.
Okay.
Over a period of time, it just, they feel a little closer, they feel a little closer, they feel a little closer, and then suddenly, they realize, I'm hand in hand with God, and some people say they feel it that way. I don't know. I don't have no experience with that. Mine was exactly what I needed it to be.
Cool.
It was absolutely profound, and that's awesome. I've been running off of it ever since.
That's awesome.
So,
well, I'm gonna ask you some questions if we're good. So, what are what are your key factors right now? Do you study all the time, or do you like to stay hand in hand with God?
So I pray. In different ways, I guess you could say. I start and end my day.
Yeah.
Thanking him.
Yeah.
And praying, but then, kind of like I said, the relationship I have with him, I have a girlfriend, and what that relationship looks like is, we talk throughout the day about this or about that, and we laugh together, and we discuss our feelings together, and
take care of my kids,
problems together, stuff like that, whatever.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with him.
Yeah.
Throughout the day, when something happens, when somebody does something that I think is silly or foolish at work. As soon as they turn around and walk off, I'm like, did you see that? Like, the nerve of this guy. And he's like, and he's like, and of course, he's always like, bro, like, let it go. Like, it don't even matter.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about something else.
Knock the dust off your feet.
And so, yeah. And like, and I'll, like, during the day, like, I'll listen to a sermon if I can find one. Or I like listening to, like, gospel music. Anything that, is just constantly giving me reminders of who he is. Cool. And, just keeping my mind on him. And, and obviously reading the Bible, too. I try to read every night when I can and stuff like that.
So, okay, if you had to describe God in one word, I know there's 1,000 words, but God in one word, what would it be?
Like God.
Just God. What would you describe him?
Father.
Yeah.
Judge.
Judge. Okay. What about Jesus in one word?
I guess either peace or mercy. I guess whichever one you want to go with that.
Yeah. I like both of those. All right, y'all. Well, Brock, thank you for being here on the podcast and stuff. I really appreciate your time. If you don't care, we're going to close out in prayer. Do you want to close out in prayer? You want me to say it?
It don't matter. I can.
Brock's going to close us out in prayer. And go ahead.
Generous and merciful Heavenly Father, thank you for another day. Thank you for allowing us to be here and to just try to spread the word of what you've done for us in our lives to others, Lord. Ask that you would use this to speak to the heart of anybody that might listen to it so that they can know the kind of love that you have for them and the things that you can do for them. Thank you for all of our many blessings. Thank you for, most of all, for the salvation of our soul. I ask that you go with us from here and help us to be of service to you and others, and to always be mindful of you and what you would have us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, y'all, thanks for watching, and sorry if you've seen us like swatting, and sorry you heard my dogs. There was a bird in the tree, and they're bird dogs, so they think they gotta watch the bird all the time. But anyway, thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you, Brock, for being here. Bye, y'all.